Welcome back, agents, to Further Right with Blake Kresses, a show where I, Blake Kresses, attempt to take you further to the right. Never meet your heroes, fellas. Or more accurately in this context, never do adequate research on your heroes to the point where you realize that they aren't actually as based, epic, and red-pilled as you had initially thought. I'm, of course, going to be talking to you all today about Ronald Reagan, the 40th President of the United States, the man majorly credited for toppling the Soviet Union and commonly considered the quintessential conservative Republican president. If you've spent any time at all in right-wing circles, at events, speeches, donor groups, or even normie meme pages, there's no doubt that you've seen endless Ronald Reagan memorabilia, t-shirts, posters, graphics, whatever. We all understand that Ronald Reagan has been essentially deified by modern Republicans. Well, I'll tell you right now, if Reaganism is the bar for American conservatism, then I want no part in it, and you shouldn't either. I'll explain why. But first, I'll get the good stuff out of the way. Economic policies were decent for the most part in the short term, and his global anti-communist stance was pretty epic. Those two things are basically all he's known for, especially considering modern conservatism is almost strictly concerning economics. So they see Reagan's low taxes and deregulation and think he's a patron saint. No one looks deeper into some of his more abysmal policy decisions, largely the ones regarding social issues and their detrimental consequences that we face to this day. Well, this show is different. Here in KGB Studios, we don't care nearly as much for neoliberal economic policy as we do for the moral foundations that hold our society together, as well as strategy that will actually result in success for conservatives. So, let's get into where Ronald Reagan fails tremendously in both of those categories. My grievances with this president are largely due to three major policy decisions and their unforeseen results on American society at large. Number one, Reagan banned full autos. For the party that flies the Gadsden flag like there's no tomorrow, they sure do love a gun grabber. The Firearm Owners Protection Act is ironically named in that it actually banned the private sale of fully automatic weapons, a clear violation of our Second Amendment rights. Now, I'm not one of these libertarians who think people should own nukes or whatever, but I am a firm believer in the slippery slope. It's not a fallacy, it's just accurate. The same logic that leads to the banning of full autos leads to the banning of semi-autos. Our good old AR-15s. And this is apparent in Reagan's post-presidency support for this exact thing. He advocated for the Clinton-era assault weapons ban. If you make one infringement on our rights, more are certain to come. And speaking on the slippery slope, these other two policies from Reagan that I'm about to cover are basically prerequisites for the tyrannical, atheistic state of America that we deal with today, which fully automatic weapons would be very useful to combat with. But this leads me to the second of Reagan's policy that I take issue with, which was amnesty for 3 million illegal aliens. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, California used to be a pretty reliably red state. Reagan was the governor there before becoming president, and when he did run for president, he easily won the state both times. The mere thought that California would ever vote red today is just absurd, thanks in large part to this very policy from Reagan himself. Reagan believed that by giving amnesty to 3 million criminals, he'd convince Democrats to concede and support superior enforcement at our border. This, of course, didn't even happen, and thanks to this attempted compromise, California is now solid blue. This is because, as we all know, immigrants overwhelmingly vote left, and they always have. Democrats to this day import third world migrants and treat them better than they treat actual American citizens because they know they can rely on their votes. Reagan wasn't the first Republican to overlook this, and definitely not the last, but if we continue to ignore demographic change and the disenfranchisement of Americans, we can be certain that we will never hold serious political power in this country again. And eventually every state will be as liberal as California. But I'm going to cover this more in depth in a future Further Right video because it's a huge topic to cover, so stay tuned. Now, the final Reagan policy I'm going to talk about is his support for no-fault divorce laws. This can easily be considered the greatest travesty of his entire career, and arguably the one with the most disastrous results. Now, I'm going to have to clarify this action wasn't taken by Reagan during his presidency, but rather while he was governor of California. However, this made California the very first state in the nation to institute such a law, and Reagan the first governor to sign it. And again, slippery slope. A majority of states soon followed. Prior to this, people could only get a divorce due to a serious fault, such as adultery, cruelty, or abuse. No-fault divorce essentially allows divorce for any reason, down to emotional whims, and has led to rapidly increasing divorce rates all around the country. This in turn causes extreme problems, particularly for the children of divorce, such as higher high school dropout rates and likelihood of committing crime, as well as single mother or fatherhood. The law means to help people get out of loveless marriages due to irreconcilable differences, but it has no regard for the main victims, the children. Marriage is not meant to exist primarily for the sake of the partners involved, although it certainly does, but rather to provide the optimal environment for children to grow up in, with both their mother and their father. The institution of no-fault divorce weakens, or I may even say eliminates, the sanctity and seriousness of marriage and families. As conservatives, promoting strong and prosperous families needs to be our #1 priority, and Reagan unfortunately failed at this. Now, later on in his life, he did admit to his son that signing this law was the worst mistake of his life. So I'm happy that he understood that before passing. Now, moving on, I believe that this Ronald Reagan conservatism, neoliberal conservatism with its hyper-focus on capitalism and free markets with total disregard to social traditionalism is nothing more than a prerequisite to the hyper-leftism that we see today. And there's no better anecdote for this than Ronald Reagan's own son, Ron Reagan, founder of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch our video on this cringe atheist organization here. I'm not trying to be mean or pessimistic. If you like Reagan, you like Reagan. He did do a lot of good things, and he's not the worst president ever. But if we mistakenly neglect to criticize and to learn from the mistakes of even our greatest heroes, our entire movement is doomed. So, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, follow us all on Instagram, and join our Patreon, where for only $8 a month, you can receive early access to all of our content. Have a great day, y'all, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.